Hello and howdy everyone. A couple days ago I had the extreme pleasure of seeing a film that I've been wanting to see for some time now, Room 237. It's a very interesting film, documentary I suppose. Even to call it a documentary, I guess I technically have to, but I want to call it something new. It really more of, well, I guess it's right there in the title, analysis. I'm trying to remember the full title of the film. Even the title of the film made me geek out about this. It was, I believe, Room 237, an analysis of The Shining in 9 parts. I think that's the full title of the film. I think it even, is something besides a documentary. I think, again, it seems to be more of a lecture, an analysis. But documentary is fine. I really loved it. I think that this is, kind of a dream movie for me. About what felt like 6 months ago or so, I was reading, I believe it was Entertainment Weekly, and they were reporting on Sundance. If it wasn't Entertainment Weekly, it was Hollywood Reporter. Those are the 2 entertainment magazines I read. In one of those magazines, they were doing their report on Sundance, and there was a brief mention of a film called Room 237 that was about that. Again, it was just like maybe 1 or 2 sentences, just a blurb, talking about how Stanley Kubrick directed the moon landing and then basically told everyone about it through symbolism and what have you throughout The Shining. That just 1 or 2 sentences blew my mind. I couldn't believe that someone made a film about it. I immediately wanted to see it. And I couldn't believe that I had to wait to see this movie. I wanted to fly to Sundance and reverse time so that I could watch that screening. I had known about the moon landing conspiracy. I had a roommate for a couple of years out here in Los Angeles who was a conspiracy theorist. He really big into the conspiracy theory and general paranoia. He had an expansive library on any type of conspiracy theory you could, imagine. No pun intended. So I knew, after living, almost 2 years with this guy, I've pretty much been exposed to every conspiracy theory there is, done research on the conspiracy theories, had conversational debates over conspiracy theories, and again, I find it all fascinating. It's like living fiction. It's something to make this boring existence, something exciting. We don't have to be just regular humans going about our daily monotonous lives if we're, trapped in some system and working for some evil cabal of humans and shape-shifting lizard people. That makes life exciting. But no, we're just, going throughout our daily routines. Very unexciting indeed. So I was fascinated, I am fascinated by conspiracy theories because of that need to sensationalize and fantasize on life. That your life is so boring and we're so ungrateful for what we have that we have to invent these things to entertain our measly minds. So I had known about this conspiracy theory that we didn't actually go to the moon. Basically, that the moon landing was a inspirational ploy to pull America ahead of Russia in the Cold War, I guess, the race to space, and we were being humbled by Mother Russia, and we needed to do something to say, hey, we're better, we're American, we're still number one, let's go to the moon. And we got to the moon, and whatever, America was number one. Dealt a crushing emotional blow to Russia. And it was all fake, according to this conspiracy theory. Just to get America over this hump or whatever, why ever you would think you would need to engineer something like that. So that was fine. It could be easily disproven, but it still fascinating. And what fascinated me most, what really got me into it, is that the moon landing was directed, the moon landing that we all know, one of the most significant cultural events of all time, was directed by Stanley Kubrick, the perfectionist, the genius of Stanley Kubrick. That no other person, no other filmmaker could possibly handle the realism and perfectionist nature that a lie of this magnitude would have to endure. So why not get the greatest filmmaker known, Stanley Kubrick, to do it? I am a Stanley Kubrick, worshiper. Stanley Kubrick is God. He's the greatest filmmaker to have ever lived, in my opinion. He worked at another level. I still haven't seen a director who operates at the levels that Kubrick did. He's just something else. There's film, and then there's Stanley Kubrick, if you ask me. So I was totally into this idea of Stanley Kubrick being the director of the moon landing. It still didn't make me believe it, but man, talk about geeking out. It really got me. So when I read that 2-sentence blurb in the magazine, I wanted to be about it. I wanted to see the movie right then and there. So finally, after months of waiting, it felt like a half a year. I don't know when Sundance is. I guess November, October. Anyway, it finally came to Los Angeles, and I finally got to see it. And it's a movie for Kubrick geeks. It's a geeky love letter to Stanley Kubrick. So I loved it. I loved the film. If you love Stanley Kubrick, if you even like Stanley Kubrick, I think you're going to get a lot out of this film. But if you are a Stanley Kubrick, disciple, then you'll worship this film. I love this film just because it's just like a geek love letter. It's like a geek love letter. The film delves into basically just The Shining. All of the visuals, everything you see is from a movie in this. You never see a talking head. You never see a person, in the documentary style of talking to the camera about whatever they're talking about, being interviewed. You never see that. All you see are movies. You see clips from every Stanley Kubrick movie. I believe everyone was represented, including Fear and Desire, if I'm not mistaken. As well as, clips from other films that would go on to be influenced by Kubrick. Clips from Spielberg films and Scorsese films. It just... who else was in there? Oh gosh. The Italian director. Anyway, I can't remember. So everything you see has been seen before. It's a film. It's kind of like a mashup of films. Primarily, what you see, I'd say 95% of the visual imagery is from The Shining. So it's basically you're just watching The Shining out of order with a couple of other movies spliced in here and there, but all of the audio is the subjects, the speakers, the conspiracy theorists, talking about their theories over the film. These theories range from totally outrageous and just grasping at straws to, theories that do make you think. They alter the art so much in this day and age, and it really, that's the thing about art, is it can mean anything if you want it to mean something. That's all really I need to say is you can make a subjective piece of art mean what you want it to mean. And if you are good enough at arguing your point, making other people see your point, then people will go, oh, yeah, okay, I get that. If you believe strongly enough in your perspective on that work of art. And these people, I can't remember if it was 6 people or 9 people, I think maybe 6, these people believe in their theories, wholeheartedly. There's no lack of passion. Perhaps there's a lack of logic, but there's never a lack of passion. And I find that captivating. It depends on, your willingness to go along with the flow most of the time. One of the theories that, I guess I could see, but she was just, for the most part, I thought really grasping at straws, was like The Shining is a modern retelling of the Minotaur story, which I get, but she was like, saying this is a Minotaur, that's a Minotaur, pause it here. Oh, that, again, I wanted to talk about the manipulation of art. This is like, we're watching it frame by frame, just like, dun, 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 and, everyone's taking great meaning, into just little things, continuity errors, again, that you wouldn't notice in real time, but if you pause it and go frame by frame and watch the entire film that way, you're going to see a lot of stuff. You're going to notice a lot of stuff. I've seen The Shining many, many, many times, since I was a kid. It was one of the first R-rated movies I was allowed to watch, because I was obsessed with Stanley Kubrick at a young age. I never noticed, a lot of what they point out in this film. And a lot of it does make me think that, oh, well, it must mean something. Again, you always take into account that Stanley Kubrick was a genius. It's pointed out several times. I didn't quite know this, but he had a 200 IQ. He was a world-ranked chess player. So he operated, I think, at levels that most humans do not. And if anyone was capable of doing what people say he does in this film, it's going to be Stanley Kubrick. I don't think anyone else is capable of even doing that without going insane. Before I forget it, I think one of the obvious omissions here is if you have one of the later editions of The Shining on DVD or Blu-ray, on that disc will be a special feature called The Making of The Shining, directed by Stanley Kubrick's daughter, Vivian Kubrick, I believe. Vivian Kubrick, had a camera, followed around, basically documented the making of The Shining, and made her own documentary of The Shining. Very brief footage of that is shown during this film. Having watched the making of The Shining, the Vivian Kubrick film, several times, really, watching that kind of blows Room 237 out of the water. Just because the camera is there all the time, and we're watching them make The Shining. And it's obvious that none of the decisions, that they're thinking that must maintain this strict level of control, just this, what must have been just like a insane amount of thinking and planning. None of that is evident in Vivian Kubrick's film. Now, the conspiracy theorist would, shoot back, well, of course, she's in on it. But again, that's what the conspiracy theorist does, is no matter what you say, they're, they've got an answer for it, because that's the nature of conspiracy theories. As they can, they're really, a conspiracy theory is just another version of art, I think. It just makes art out of the mundane of life, which I know that's what art is anyway, but, it's like actively participating in life and trying to, change a life. I guess I maybe lost my point in there, but you just can't argue with the conspiracy theorist. Someone who really believes it. So the Minotaur was like reaching. I'd say some of the theories that I really enjoyed, that really kind of got to me. Let me say another one that I didn't like too much, or at least was the farthest reaching. Okay, so after Barry Lyndon, he theorized that Barry Lyndon, gorgeously shot, gorgeous film, was incredibly boring. Barry Lyndon, to quote him, Barry Lyndon was made by a bored genius. After Barry Lyndon, he took something like 8 years off before getting into The Shining. In that 8 years, and this is like proven, again, that's also what makes conspiracy theories so powerful, is they can take one small segment rooted in fact and then just explode on it. Kubrick did, for all intents and purposes, become an ad man. He went up to Madison Avenue in New York. Well, maybe he didn't actually go because he was terrified of flying and rarely left his compound in Europe, England, the countryside of England. But he basically, Stanley Kubrick, in that break, became an ad man. He wanted to know everything about modern advertising, subliminal imagery. He basically became, an ad man in that gap between Barry Lyndon and The Shining. That's a fact. That's a fact. Now, he thinks he took all of his knowledge that he amassed and made a subliminal film. Now, this guy would pause the film and say, okay, there's the face of Stanley Kubrick in the cloud. He's putting his own face, to show that he's looking over the production, and I'm like, what? And I'm staring at the cloud, and I'm not seeing Stanley Kubrick's face. And, he's pausing like the film and saying, okay, now look at the way these are arranged, and you can see the word sex, and, look at the grain of the wood, and you'll see this. And I'm like, okay, I guess. So, again, there's just some that are just totally reaching, if they're still somewhat fascinating, and again, rooted in fact, but it's like, okay. But a few of the other theories are definitely interesting. There's a theory that, God, I just want to keep on talking about this film. I'm trying to wrap it up, and I just keep on thinking of things to think about. I give this film, a 9. I have to. I guess I haven't said that yet. I want to give it a 10 just because, again, it's like a love letter to Kubrick. It's a love letter to The Shining. It's a love letter to film. It's again, just for film geeks and Stanley Kubrick geeks, there's just nothing wrong with it. It's just fascinating. So I've got a lot of bias going into it. I realize that, but this is definitely one of the best times I've had in the theater this year, just because it's so outlandish and creative and fascinating. So, I don't really have a problem giving it a 10 just because of my devout worship kind of demands it. But, realistically, I can give it a 9. But even after, that, I can't give it anything below a 9. There's a theory that talks about the genocide of the American Indians. I found that highly fascinating. Again, also rooted in fact. Stanley Kubrick sent in like a research team, like a 3-4 man research team, and they spent nearly a year, something like 6 to 9 months in Colorado, traveling around Colorado, learning everything about Colorado, the history of Colorado, just traveling to every corner of the state, amassing all of this information about the state, the history, the culture of Colorado. To what end, I don't know, because Stanley Kubrick wants it. And again, so this leads to genocide of the Native American people that were indigenous to the Colorado area. There's many obvious references to Native American culture. Again, he gets more and more into depth. I'm running out of time, and I really wanted to talk. If this film has a climax, and this is definitely what I want to talk about, because it was definitely the weirdest thing. It left me feeling highly uneasy. Is that there's all sorts of mirrored images in The Shining. Talking backwards. Again, reflections and reversals, reverse speak is very important in The Shining. So, this one guy, I think he called it a mirror watching experience. I don't know how he did this originally. It would just seem like very complicated to me. He started The Shining at the same time he started The Shining from the end. So so you've got the movie starting, and then at the same time you see the end of the movie. So the last frame of the film, not including the credits, not including the end credits, starting at the last frame of the film before fading to black, and superimposing that image over the very first frame of the film, and watching the film that way. So you're watching the film go forward, and you're watching the film go backward at the same time, and the images over that. I've never seen that done before. I never even heard of that being done, and just watching that was sort of unsettling. I think that would probably be unsettling to do for any film, but it did match up in ways that were bizarre, that definitely added, something to the film. And it really kind of made me feel uneasy. And to watch it that way, it was definitely fascinating. Didn't even think about it. And it did seem to match up. It seemed to sync up and kind of mean something. Or at least think to mean something. I think the whole point of the film is that art is what you want to make of it. I think that's kind of the point the filmmakers make at the very end. I want to see this movie again, and hopefully I can talk more about it. I'm almost running out of time, and I feel I could keep on talking about it. But I was endlessly fascinated by it. It just all this passion. I'm into it. I get it. Even if the ideas are outlandish and logic, is a victim. Logic is often a victim to passion, so that's fine. I got to wrap it up. I'm literally running out of time. So that was Room 237. Room 237. A great film. I loved it. If you like Stanley Kubrick, then you're going to like this film. You got to see it. All right. Thanks for listening. Bye.